The featured event on Friday, the Breeders Cup Juvenile, always a good portention for the Kentucky Derby the next year, and we definitely have our early favorite for it here in Forte, not the one that we thought was going to be the champion coming out of this. Aaron, I'll go to you first. We were all very heavy on Cave Rock, every single bet that we had going. I don't know there's really much he could have done differently, or he ran a little bit of a pace setup and got beat.
This was the one I was most disappointed in all weekend. And you might say, well, he still got second, and Golden Pal and Jackie's Warrior, they ran worse. Maybe they did, but Cave Rock looked pretty shitty in this race. And again, I know he got second in a grade 1 and it's the juvenile, but I didn't think he ever looked that good in this race. Did you, Somich?
Looks like an immature horse to me, like a 2-year-old, right? I mean, that because Cave Rock should have rated. I don't know why they have first here across the board either. I felt like Hurricane J had the lead on him around the turn, at least the first turn, and he was forced 3 wide almost in that first turn. So it felt like Cave Rock should have just settled behind Hurricane J. And when you go 22-4 and then into a 47.5 and you're 3 wide on the first turn and pressing there, you're going to get tired. And so to me, this was one of those spots where, like, look, Cave Rock needed to decide, hey, I'm going to let Hurricane J go, and I'm going to just try and trounce this horse, pull a flight line type trip, right? If you're that good, you got to be able to do it. And he's just not mentally there yet. He could easily get there next year, but he's just not mentally there yet as a 2-year-old running this early in his career. And that got him. You could tell he was clearly more tired down the lane than he ever had been. He didn't switch leads at all until very late in the race. So you could just see that the immaturity on the Cave Rock side when he was faced with a tough trip. And in this case, it was simply, you're not easily the fastest horse out of the gate, which he has been in every other race of his.
I was so mad at myself because we both did so much. We both loved Forte in that race at Keeneland and such a good effort. And I did everything straight. Cave Rock with Forte or Cave Rock with National Treasure, and just like I had Forte in stuff, but not in the top spot, like an idiot. Not even one little saver on this horse, So I was really frustrated. And it was one of those days, and Magic talked about it. He's like, if you just would have like boxed your bets and still, instead of going straight, you would have cleaned house. But it's hard to box a bet when you're using a 1-2 shot, so you can't do it. So anyway, yeah, it was frustrating. I hated, and it probably comes from what you're saying. He's immature and he was just more tired than normal. He didn't change his leads. He ran up the backside, even like he was almost like he was, I don't know, it's like tied in knots almost. Just didn't look smooth. And I was just like, even when he turned for home and he put away, Hurricane J, and he'd kind of putting away National Treasure, I still thought, yeah, you're probably going to get beat. You're kind of walking. And then you scale back and quickly you're like, oh, he has no shot, because Forte made a massive move. I thought he ran a fantastic race in the spot.
Yeah, Forte was like a freight train around that turn. When you were looking back, it was one horse moving. Everyone else was pretty much going up and down, and that one horse that was coming was Forte. Improved a little bit off of his previous race, the Breeders' Cup Futurity, from a numbers perspective. Cave Rock and National Treasure both regressed off that Santa Anita Derby race, which is something we probably have to start looking at now that we've seen multiple West Coast horses regress when they've come east. Last year for the Derby, obviously, with Table and Messier, and now Cave Rock and National Treasure struggling with the same thing here. So that at least has to be something in the back of your mind as a bettor now with these horses. See what happens with the Baffert contingent this year in the Derby, because we know they aren't going to be Bafferts, right? So we got to figure out where they're going and where these horses end up. Man, Forte looked great, though. And this, to me, and I don't want to take away from Forte, because I think Forte was phenomenal in this race. I got even more excited about Loggins after this race, because I thought Loggins ran a better Breeders' Cup Futurity than Forte did. And then Forte comes back and does this. So I think we have a really fun Derby season this year. I think we're going to have a lot of different directions you can go. We haven't seen the Florida horses come into the question yet. I guarantee you, this was a better Breeders' Cup Juvenile than last year. Like the top 3 horses will most likely all be in the Derby and possibly the top 4.
Yeah, as long as they stay healthy, I totally agree with that. I think it's much better. And Greg makes the point. He said, I went with Forte after I saw him. Greg, he's one of the prettiest horses I saw in those 2 days. This horse does not look like a 2-year-old. He is massive. He knows, and you went on to say he carried himself. He knows he's good. And he definitely, he looked great at Keeneland that day, and we only saw him on the screen, I'm saying, but if you remember, I was saying, oh my gosh, he looks amazing. And then you see him in person, it's like, yeah, he is a big beast of a horse. But you know what? Cave Rock is a pretty nice looking horse too in the flesh. So yeah, but Forte, wow, he ran to the looks. Let's put it that way.
What did the super pay here, Magic? Scroll down a little bit. Just out of curiosity, because I want to know how hard I should kick myself.
Yeah, that was everybody's top 4.
I mean, so it paid that 10-cent super paid 13, so 130 to 1 for Forte Cave Rock National Treasure Blazing Sevens, and like you could probably just key Blazing Sevens in fourth too there and get 137 to 1. That's crazy. 134 to 1.
Yeah.
All right, let's put a bow on this.
I'm sorry.
I was gonna say we'll just put a bow on this and say we're looking at the Kentucky Derby now. This is the other than Corniche, the horse that wins the Breeders' Cup Juvenile traditionally always at least makes the gate for the Kentucky Derby. Are we on logins? I know that was brought up. Are we thinking Forte, maybe Arabian Night, the 2-year-old that we saw run his ass off for Bob Baffert?
That's tough right now. I will say this. Lord Forkwood brought up in the chat 10 to 1 on Forte in the Derby. I wouldn't take 10 to 1 on anybody in the Derby right now. It's just way too far out for my taste and the way that we've seen horses not make it into the Derby gate. I wouldn't consider anyone sub 40 to 1 right now, which normally means you're taking out most of the top contenders from this race. As far as the best horse, the best race I still think is what Cave Rock did out at Santa Anita. I'm not sure I can play him now, though. Or, I'm sorry, Del Mar, but I'm not sure I can play him. I can say that he should be the Derby favorite. I think there's a group of 5 or 6 that you could really make an argument around.
Yeah, I agree with that. David brought up Arabian Night. I mean, that horse looked awfully good as well. It was just the first race. It was just a 1-turn race. So for the Derby purposes, we'll have to see. We'll see what he does when he stretches out. I want to mention what Truth Exposed says here. It says both Cave Rock and Forte are built like they're already 3. So that's important to note because they could be early developers. And what's going to happen when the other horses start to kind of develop to their level when we get closer to the Derby? That's going to be a big key as well. So no, back to I want to reiterate what Somich just said. Don't take anybody at 10 to 1 right now. Don't do it. I mean, if you can get a flyer on something, go ahead. But it is way too early to take what I believe is 10 to 1, still a short price for a race that's going to be run in May. So don't do it right now.
If I bet any horse in the Derby right now out of this race, it would be National Treasure, who the 10 post was a brutal trip for him, was 3 or 4 wide on the first turn, tried really hard on the backstretch, went too early, just got too tired down the lane. He would be the one who Baffert has said is 5 months mentally developmental behind Cave Rock at this point. He'd be the one that I'd be interested in.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely one that could, do exactly what I was kind of trying to say is like maybe could develop. The horses that are good right now are not always the horses that are good come May. We've seen it. Some years that they'll hold that form, and some years those horses that we're talking about right now, they're nowhere to be found. So that is a question that's going to start to get answered come January, February, March, and on into April.
And, we're just getting started. Racing Dudes, we're your home for the Kentucky Derby season. So make sure you come back here. Subscribe to youtube.com/Racing Dudes for all the Kentucky Derby coverage leading up to the first Saturday of May in 2023. Hit like on the video. Subscribe to our channel. We'll see you at the track.